You have done this before. The year-end reflection. The honest accounting of what was supposed to happen and what actually did. The list of things that were going to be different, and the quiet recognition that different, again, did not arrive. The resolution made on December 31st, and the familiar dissolution of it somewhere between the 14th and the 21st of January, when the novelty ran out and the same patterns that governed last year reasserted themselves over the new year's intentions like water finding its level. You know how this goes. The question is not whether you know how it goes. The question is whether this time, before the clock turns, you are willing to do the one thing that every previous year-end did not include. The thing that is not a resolution, not a list, not a vision board, not a word for the year. The thing that is honest, specific, uncomfortable, and the only variable that has ever produced a year that was actually different from the one before it. Bruce Banner spent years applying the same intelligence, the same rigors, the same genuine effort to the same problem, and getting the same result. Not because he was failing, because he was solving the wrong problem. The year that changed was not the year he tried harder. It was the year he finally looked honestly at what was actually producing the outcome. Not the outcome he wanted to explain, the outcome that was actually occurring. This video is that honest look before 2026 arrives. Here's what it requires. Before any plan for 2026, one question answered in writing. Not the question about what you want next year to produce. The question about what this year actually produced, and what specific daily and weekly behaviors produced it. Not the summary version, not the version that acknowledges the failures, but frames them charitably, the accurate version. What were the 3 behaviors that, if repeated daily across 2026, would produce the same result as 2025? Name them, write them, look at them on the page. Then the harder question, what were the 3 behaviors that, if run consistently across 2026, would produce a different result than 2025? Not goals, behaviors. The specific, observable, daily actions. What you do with the first hour. Whether the money is directed or drifted. Whether the hard thing is approached or avoided. Whether the hard thing is approached or avoided. Whether the commitment made on Sunday is honored on Thursday. Banner's year changed when he stopped explaining the problem and started identifying the mechanism producing it. The mechanism was specific. The mechanism was behavioral. The mechanism was something he could change, but only after he had named it accurately, rather than approximately. The honest audit is that naming. It happens before the plan, not after it. Without it, the plan is built on the same approximate picture that produced every previous year's failed plan. Every year that was genuinely different from the one before it was made different by one decision, not 17 resolutions. One decision made cleanly, held without renegotiation. Running through the year as the non-negotiable anchor everything else was built around. The men who transformed their position across a calendar year almost never did it through a comprehensive system change. They did it by identifying the single variable, the one behavior whose consistent presence or absence was most responsible for the current position, and making that variable non-negotiable for 12 months. Not 10 habits, not a morning routine overhaul, not a productivity system. One decision. The specific thing that the honest audit identified as the primary mechanism producing the current outcome. Addressed directly, changed specifically, held consistently. Stay with this. What comes next is the specific question that every year-end content avoids, because the answer to it is uncomfortable, and it is the only question whose answer actually determines whether 2026 is different from 2025. The question is not what you want 2026 to produce. That question is easy. You have answered it every year. The question is, what are you willing to stop doing that produced 2025? Not reduce, not moderate, stop. The behavior that the honest audit identified as the primary mechanism of the current outcome. Are you willing to stop it? Not cut back on it. Stop it. Because cutting back on the mechanism that produced the problem produces a smaller version of the same problem. Stopping it produces a different year. Banner did not reduce the problem. He changed the mechanism. The same decision is available to you before December ends. Beat 3. The architecture before January, the year that is actually different, is not made different in January. It is made different in the final days of December. When the honest audit has been completed, the one decision has been made, and the architecture of the new year has been built before the new year arrives to fill with the old patterns. The architecture is 3 things. The one non-negotiable behavior named specifically with a time and a location and a trigger The one behavior that the honest audit identified as the primary mechanism of the current outcome, removed from the default day before January, makes it feel normal again. And the one metric, not a goal, a measurement, that will tell you by February whether the year is moving differently or producing the same outcome in new packaging. 3 things written down before midnight on December 31st, not on January 1st, before midnight on December 31st. The difference is not ceremonial. The difference is that the architecture built before the year begins is built by the clear-eyed version of you who completed the honest audit. The architecture built on January 1st is built by the motivated version of you who hasn't been tested yet. One of those architectures survives February, the other one doesn't. You already know which one. You came into this expecting the video to tell you what to do in 2026. The specific habits, the specific system, the specific plan that makes next year different from this one. The plan cannot be built before the audit. The architecture cannot be designed before the mechanism has been named. The resolution cannot be made before the honest answer to the question of what stopped the previous one. Every previous year that failed did so because the plan was made before the honest audit, because the comfortable version of the current position was accepted as the basis for the new year's plan, and the comfortable version is always missing the specific behavior that actually produced the outcome. The honest audit first, the mechanism named, the one decision made, the architecture built, then 2026. In that order, not the other way around. Tonight, the audit, not the plan, the audit. 1 page, 3 behaviors that produced 2025. 3 behaviors that would produce a different 2026, written in the specific behavioral language that names the mechanism rather than the intention. Then the one decision, the primary mechanism identified by the audit, addressed directly, not moderated, changed. 1 sentence naming the specific daily behavior that replaces it with a time and a location and a trigger that makes the replacement automatic rather than dependent on the daily recommitment that previous plans required and previous Januaries consumed. Then the one metric, the specific measurable output that will tell you by the 14th of February whether the year is running differently. Not a feeling, a number, something that either moved or didn't. That metric, checked on February 14th, is the first honest data point about whether this year is actually different from the previous ones. The audit produces it. The decision enables it. The architecture delivers it. 2026 will not be different because the date changed. It will be different because the mechanism changed, and the mechanism only changes when the audit is honest enough to name it. Do the audit tonight. The year changes when the mechanism does. 1 page tonight. The audit first, the decision second, the architecture third, in that order. Before January arrives, and the motivation to do the audit honestly is replaced by the motivation to write the plan that feels better than the audit does. The year that is actually different begins with the audit that is actually honest. That audit is available tonight. Do it. 1 question. And this is the honest one. What is the single behavior that, if you name it accurately, the honest audit of 2025 identifies as the primary mechanism of the current position? Not a comfortable answer. The accurate one. Drop it in the comments. 1 sentence. That sentence is the mechanism. Naming it publicly is the beginning of changing it. If this was the year-end content that went somewhere, the resolution lists never go. Subscribe. More of this. The year changes when the mechanism does. The mechanism changes when the audit is honest. Do the audit tonight.